On July 19, 2018, Hebrew became the only official language in Israel. Considering this historic event, we would like to tell you some interesting facts about the Hebrew language. While these facts are not necessary to master Hebrew, they are important for general knowledge and proper context for understanding how Hebrew works. Hebrew first appeared over 3,000 years ago. Like any language, Hebrew is dynamic and is constantly changing. New words and expressions appear, while others become less common. Pronunciations and meanings of words evolve. Other words are incorporated from surrounding language, and grammar changes with the times. Generally, 4 distinct stages are recognized in the development of the Hebrew. 1. Ancient Hebrew, Biblical Hebrew, 1300 BCE until 300 BCE. In Biblical Hebrew, it is possible to see the roots of the modern Hebrew. All 7 groups of verbs, binyanim, are present, as are many of the roots and words we are familiar with today. 8,000 verbs can be found in the written sources. Although some of the meanings are unclear to us today, we encounter the concept of Ivri in the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, 34 times. However, this word does not refer to the Hebrew language, but rather to the nation, whose language is called Yehudit. The first time the word Hebrew is used to refer to a language is in the 2nd century BCE. The sages, beginning in about the 1st century, began to use the expression Lashon HaKodesh, holy language, to refer to the Hebrew and to distinguish it from other languages spoken by the Jews of the time.
Number 2, the language of the sages. As the Jewish nation grew, the language continued to evolve. This is the language of the building of the Second Temple, the revolt of the Maccabees, and of Rabbi Akiva. The Aramaic language has a great influence on Hebrew at this point. During this period, the binyan of Pu'al was almost never used, and Hitpial began performing Pu'al's function. The number of 4-letter roots grew considerably, the meaning of some words changed, and many words appeared. This period of development ends the 2nd century CE. 3. The language of the Middle Ages and the diaspora. During the 2nd century CE, a very long period in the history of Hebrew began, which lasted about 1700 years. During this period, there was almost no use of Hebrew as a spoken language. It was reserved for prayer and religious writing. The Mishnah was written in Hebrew, but the Gemara was written in Aramaic, which was the spoken language of most of the Jews until the 10th century. Beautiful literature was written in Hebrew by men such as Rashi, who wrote commentaries on the Torah and the Talmud in Hebrew, or Rabbi Yehuda Halevi, who wrote poetry. However, because the language was not used for daily life, it did not keep up with the new concepts, instruments, and mechanisms of modernity. During this time period, pronunciation began to change within different communities. It was during this era that the signs of the vowels began to appear. These signs, nekudot, did not exist in Biblical Hebrew, but they became necessary to maintain proper pronunciation of biblical words. The form that gained acceptance and is used today is called Tiberian, from the city of Tiberia. According to one opinion, the closest pronunciation we have today to Biblical Hebrew is that of the Yemenite community.
4. Modern Hebrew, 1880 until today. When did the revival of spoken Hebrew occur? According to the opinion of the Hebrew Academy, the revival of Hebrew as a modern language began in the 1880s. At that time, there arose a generation of children who were raised in the land of Israel in schools that taught in Hebrew. In many ways, Hebrew was a language that had to be created because it had not been used as a vernacular for so many years. An important stage in the process of Hebrew becoming a full-fledged language was when, at the very start of the British Mandate in Palestine, Hebrew was recognized as one of the 3 official languages. Considering this, modern Hebrew is a very young language.
Following are a few remarkable facts about Hebrew. Today, about 9 million people speak Hebrew on some level, with 5 million of them speaking Hebrew as their mother tongue. This is astonishing because only 126 years ago there were only 2 people in the world who spoke modern Hebrew, Eliezer ben Yehuda and his son Itamar. It is not easy to count all the words in Hebrew. Most hold that Hebrew has a 75 to 80,000 word vocabulary, including borrowed words and contractions, smichut, because Hebrew is such a young language. It is constantly gaining words, in particular from English and Arabic, and it is close to impossible to count the expressions in Hebrew. According to the Even Shoshan dictionary, Hebrew has 3,407 roots. 2/3 of them consist of 3 letters. Another source states that 2,700 roots are the basis for forming all verbs in Hebrew. It demonstrates the unique simplicity and elegant morphological structure that the rich and effective language of Hebrew can have with such a relatively small number of roots.